Other than that, sir, how are you?
I are wonderful in a completely weird way.
In a completely weird way.
Yes.
That sounds like there's a story connected.
There is a story connected.
Fantastic, because if we started off just by saying, fine, then the opening to the show would be pretty dull.
That's right. It would be. All right. I will tell you this story. And then we can discuss what actually happened. All right?
Okay.
At the end of January, based on a conversation you and I and your Discord server had...
You're always blaming my poor Discord server for things.
Sometimes they deserve it. I sent out a tweet. Okay. Because you're often you and the Discordians or the Angryons. Is that what we are now? Angryons.
Apparently, they have decided they like Angryons.
Okay. You and the Angryons.
And as we have learned, it is very important for me to have proper appellations for everything.
Correct. Very correct. You and the Angryons are very much on the side of, and I'm not saying I'm not on that side. I'm just trying to condense things by expanding them, obviously. The sentiment seems to be, most of the time, that games, RPGs in which the GM is not allowed or never gets to roll dice are not fun for the GM.
Yeah, okay. In the interest of brevity, I'll just agree with that sentiment, because there's a lot of nuance to it.
Sure, obviously.
And honestly, I do have to think that, much like a cult leader, I believe that is a viewpoint of mine that they have adopted as gospel.
Okay, that's fine. I mean, they are the Angryons. They're not, they're not the free-thinking society of individuals. They're the Angryons. They've identified. They're going to yell at me. Anyway, the point being, I thought about that for a while, right?
Uh-huh.
And it's a valid point to an extent. It doesn't necessarily apply to every game everywhere and that kind of stuff, but it's a valid point.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a GM who enjoys rolling dice, then not rolling dice is not as fun.
Right.
Fine.
And if you're a gamer, you probably enjoy rolling dice, and GMs are gamers.
Sure.
Rolling dice is fun.
For as far as it goes, it's a fair statement.
Right.
Now, I thought to myself, this is interesting. I wonder if I can test an idea just to see what the input's going to be like coming back at me.
God.
So I made a tweet at the end of January. And all it says is the following. I've been working on this idea for a new RPG system, and it's really cool. Very dynamic and responsive story-focused mechanics. Only the GM rolls dice. Set in a near-future world with a variety of character archetypes and species. So I've got a lot of buzzy words, right?
Yeah, every indie gamer at that first sentence had to clean up after they heard you say that.
Yes, exactly.
I'm sorry, excuse the vulgarity there, but
the nugget there, the hook is only GMs roll dice.
Right. At which point, then they all hated you.
You know what's funny?
Mm-hmm.
Literally nobody noticed that except one person.
Okay.
Who called me out on it much later. is a fellow we know, or I know anyway. I'm going to call him Counselor Nathan.
Okay.
Okay.
Fair enough.
He is the only one who mentioned that didn't really sound very fun for the players.
Uh-huh. Did you then immediately turn around and say, so why did people think it would be fun for the GM?
Nope.
Because that would have been my response, and then I would have dropped the mic, closed the Twitter, and ran away.
I actually visited his Discord server and had a little chat with him some time ago. Anyway,
okay.
The point being, though, I wanted to see what other people's reactions were,
mm-hmm.
right? To kind of gauge how the thinking was going, that kind of stuff. he was the only one of about, I don't know, a dozen responses in one form or another that called that out. A lot of people seem to be indifferent about it.
Right.
And a few people seem to actually like, oh, that sounds interesting. And that was pretty much as far as it went.
Okay.
Until today. Now, I'm not going to say who this was, okay?
Okay.
But a publisher of RPGs contacted me today with a simple query attached to that tweet I just read out. It says, "Do you have a publisher?" So I said I don't. And I also then explained what the whole thing was about that tweet. Okay? And apologized for distracting him from other actual RPGs that intend to exist.
That was very polite and diplomatic of you.
Okay? So I was nice. I explained the whole deal. And the response I got back to that was, still interested.
Well, how much time do you have on your hands?
So that's the problem. Once again, one of my haha funny joke tweets about RPGs, all of a sudden, now there's interest in it. And my printer is cycling. This is great. Now there is interest in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like maybe I should do something with it. Except I don't know what. I have no idea what this RPG would look like or work like or how it would play or what you would do. But hey, when I figure all that out, I've got a publisher already.
See, and now here's the problem. Is you know what's happening to me now in my head because I'm like you.
Uh-huh.
You know, beyond dismissing the whole thing as like, I really don't want to do this. There comes a certain point where suddenly it's like, okay, but what would that look like? And then your brain goes into thought experiment mode.
Exactly.
And it's like, what would the themes of the game be?
How can you make that work?
Because
in a reasonable way that's fun for both sides.
Okay, because callback. Mm-hmm. We once had a conversation about an RPG that was based more on like Greco-Roman mythology and the players portraying the gods and their characters both as sort of like that cosmic chess match scene in the Harryhausen movies, right?
Right.
What if the characters were the heroes in that and the DM represented all of the gods?
Uh-huh.
And in some way, when a conflict arose, the characters through their actions contributed dice of different colors representing different types of gods.
You're right.
To a pool.
You're right. Because that's the lost episode. That's the 17 that never made it.
Damn it! Okay,
because
that was our best episode ever.
That came out of the Candyland discussion.
Damn it!
Uh-huh. Okay,
it does.
All right.
So that just further supports the theory that we lost the best episode we were ever going to record.
Yeah, absolutely.
But do you know what I'm saying, though? In that case, then the players would have pools of different dice, different numbers of dice. Maybe they would represent different stats. So, like, they have, like a stat for glory, which is red dice. And they might, one character who's very, like Glory Hound has a big, 6 red dice that they could contribute to a pool because the god who likes glory, and then you have the character who has a very strong fate and his fate score is 7 and he has 7 blue dice. and the characters and their dice pools refresh periodically.
Oh dear, I have oh. You're the GM. You have 2 piles of dice, okay? 2 pools of dice, right? Whatever, that can be built from the players.
Right.
All right. So we're with you so far. But I'm going to tell you right now that one of those pools is called fate and the other one is called luck.
There you go.
Oh, Jesus.
All right.
Okay.
Well, now you have to write an RPG.
Okay. Fine.
See,
Fine.
And this is why I only talk about my ideas vaguely until I'm ready to write about them. So that people don't try to convince me to, well, now you got to write an RPG. Right. Do you know how long I haven't been writing this RPG that I'm not writing?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, I know you do.
Yes. And it's the same thing with Transit. That was just a joke tweet.
Wait, really?
And yeah. And I literally, I forget the exact context, but I started coming up with these what I thought were really dumb ideas for RPGs.
Right.
One of which was you play an AI in a spaceship.
Mm-hmm.
And people glommed onto that. They're like, oh no, that's brilliant.
Well,
and I ignored them for like a year. And like, they kept coming up with it, every few months or every couple of weeks, somebody go, when are you going to do that RPG about the spaceship thing? And it's like, I give up. I'm just going to do it.
See, and that's why you have to be careful, because the thing is, this is the problem. Okay. All ideas, if they are new, they're going to sound good to someone. Mm-hmm. Because you can't judge an idea until you see the execution. Until then, it's anything that is new sounds interesting, and people at least get curious about it. In fact, even if the idea itself sounds bad, you will still get like the morbid curiosity kicking in. Mm-hmm. Where it's like, well, I'd really like to see how you pulled that off. And then when you present the idea sarcastically as I have a good idea, and then it sounds like a bad idea, then you definitely have the people who have the morbid curiosity because they want to see, what could you possibly think would be a good idea about this? I got to see this. Go ahead, write it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's where I find myself now.
Mm-hmm. Well, hey, now you have a starting point.
Yeah, now I've got 2 RPGs in development. Thank you very much. Jesus.
Jeez, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I know. Mm-hmm. Do you have a slot in your company that I could fill as an RPG developer?
Yeah, and right now you actually have more products in development than my actual corporation does. Which, for those who caught that, I am an actual corporation now, effective as of this week.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yes, thank you. It's can I get a little sappy here? Because this is going to sound really weird. This was way more emotional than I thought it would be. Okay. Except I sort of should have seen it coming. Okay, so basically this week I incorporated Angry Games Incorporated is now an official legal company corporation thing, and it's doing big things, or at least it has big things in the works. This was sort of the next first step, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
This is the step from, okay, now I have to be serious because if I fail, a lot is on the line. So, I was an accountant, right?
I have been made aware of that fact on more than one occasion, right. Yes.
So I was actually a small business accountant, small business compliance accountant. I also did personal tax returns, but my primary job was to work with small business owners, do their accounting, and help them manage their businesses. And at the height of it, I personally had about 100 small business clients. So I was responsible for 100 small businesses, 1 or 2 person corporations, nothing big.
Sure.
At the most, we had one that had like 24 employees. And I handled all their stuff. I handled their payroll, bookkeeping, tax returns, all that crap. And while I was doing it, you had these people who owned these companies who were all, and they were good at something, right? I mean, like a landscaper or HVAC repair, or a guy who printed stationery or printed, like paper goods, right? And they had this skill, they had built this up over years, and they decided finally to turn it into a tangible company that they would own. A thing, a legacy. As silly as that sounds, that's really what it is, because they're no longer working for anyone but themselves. They're out on their own, they have this skill, and now they're turning it into something permanent. And someday, maybe they're going to die and leave it to their kids. Or maybe they're going to sell out, sell it to someone else and retire on the proceeds. Or, or they're going to leave it to their family, and their family is going to keep running it or sell it out or whatever they do. But it's this legacy. It's a thing that represents security, stability, caring for your family, and not answering to anybody but yourself. Even if it seems like something so little as, great, I have my own landscaping business. You think, guy cuts grass for a living. But there's so much more to it than that. And it's so. For years and years, I was helping all of these people who had worked for years to build the money to start this stuff up so that they could have this legacy, so that they could have their own company that they were running based on their own skills, so that they built something real to provide for families, to provide for the life they wanted, whatever. And I was sitting there doing all the paperwork because as good as they were at everything else, at whatever they were doing, they didn't know how to run a business. I didn't know the first thing about accounting or filing tax returns or doing payroll taxes or, reporting sales tax or anything else, your modified accelerated cost recovery system, depreciation of assets, that kind of a thing. That was my job. And over time, I started to get a little jealous, a little, I don't want to say resentful. It wasn't like that, but you frequently, like I was there in 2008. When the bottom fell out of the economy. And when that happened and, the banks stopped lending money, the first people who were really hurt by that were the small businesses because they didn't have short-term credit to manage their cash flow. It's neither here nor there. We saw 25 or 30 small businesses die between in somewhere in 2008, 2009.
Right.
Okay. And we had to tell people, we had to tell these people who had built these companies from everything. It's like, get out before you lose everything that you've invested. And of course, all their other assets were protected. They weren't going to lose their home or their car or anything else, but whatever they had invested and the profits that were coming in were gone. And they were going to have to go there and fire their employees and shut their doors. And it was very emotional for them because it wasn't just a job. It wasn't just like running a business. It was, everybody had a dream. Running a business represents something. It represents providing for your family, or it represents the key to the life you have, or it just represents, I'm beholden to no one but myself now. I'm my own boss. And so it was very emotional whenever a company was shut down, and it hurt a lot of people. And that was probably the most painful thing I've ever had to do in my career. Was tell people, hey, your legacy that you built, it's dead now, and you have to put the final bullet in it. And tell people, hey, you got to go, these employees that you love, because let me tell you something too. Most managers, they don't want to fire anybody. People think firing people and laying it off is easy because heartless companies do it. Nobody ever wants to do it. But I got jealous because, they couldn't have run it without me. But the only thing I could do was run the company, do all the paperwork and all the accounting and stuff. I didn't have that thing that, people wanted, except obviously for accounting. I guess I could have started my own accounting business, but I didn't want to do that. So suddenly now, to have my own thing, I suddenly understand that to each of those people who I managed a company for, that it represented something beyond just, hey, I made my own company. That it represents, dreams, a family, security, a life, whatever. In my case, obviously, with Tiny, we want to have a family someday. We want to have a home, and I need to provide for them. That's my job. And so this is a way to do it. And it's a way to make sure that they're taken care of if and when I'm gone. But it's also going to be my name on a book. I'm going to be on a bookshelf, next to Dave Noonan and Rich Baker and Bill Slavicsek and maybe, next to one of Gary Gygax's books. So, it was suddenly a very emotional thing that doesn't seem like it because you're just filing a bunch of paperwork and shelling out a lot of money. You're writing a lot of checks.
Yeah.
So
no kidding.
So yeah, I mean, I'm sorry to get like emotional like that, but it's been sort of a weird roller coaster.
Yeah, no problem.
And now I've got this. I went through LegalZoom, and I totally recommend, because I could have done it myself. I knew everything I needed to do, but you go through LegalZoom and they take care of, and I'm doing a lot of the filings myself anyway, but they got the initial articles of incorporation done, and they send you this nice binder to keep your corporate records in and stock certificates. I wrote myself my first stock certificate.
Ooh.
Because I bought stock from my corporation so that I own it. Because my corporation is its own person. It's not me. Because law.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But, and, I as funny as it sounds, I could have done the whole incorporation for a third of the cost if I'd done it myself, not counting the time it would have taken. But I also wanted the fancy dancy binder and they're not having to just like dummy up stock certificates and go to Staples and get a corporate seal and all that stuff. I just wanted someone to give me that package like we used to give our clients.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. So that's it. I'm
cool.
Angry Games Incorporated is now a corporation, and now I got to publish some games.
Yep.
And I hear you have an interesting idea about a fate versus luck based game where the GM rolls dice pools built by the players.
Oddly enough, I do. I believe I've explained it to you before.
Yeah, that's interesting. Interesting.
Good grief. No, that's cool, man.
Yeah.
I know when I had my game store, that was a really cool thing, cool feeling just to have your own business and whatnot, like you were saying. It was nice, and it really killed me to have to shut that down.
Yeah. I
but we ran into the same thing you were talking about. It was, we hit that sort of depression thing there in the mid 2000s, and that was it.
Yeah. What a disaster that was. I don't want to get into it because, very few people realize how close the entire economic system of the United States came to collapsing and taking Europe with it.
Yeah, it was rough.
Yeah.
But I moved on to bigger and better things. Sure. Anyway,
I'm sorry. Do we need to take a moment?
No, we don't.
Okay.
I'm fine. Really, I'm fine. I've learned to deal with it. It's behind me now. Really.
On a not really related note, but
yes, please change the subject.
On the subject of segues, you got me in trouble with my gaming group, sir.
What?
You got me in trouble.
I don't even know your gaming group.
Yeah, I know. So, it's all because of the whole date thing. It's so hard to know when this happened.
Uh-huh.
Do you remember when we were talking about? I think we were talking about my first session.
Uh-huh.
And I had started to give spoilers for what would happen in my second session. And then I backed off. And then you said, well, when you think about it, given when this episode is going to come out,
right?
They'll have gotten there already, right? So you don't have to worry about it.
Well, I asked you.
It was a leading question, sir.
Sure. But I asked you.
Yeah.
And in fact, that episode just went out this week.
Yes. And that is how I got in trouble today.
Oh.
Because I inserted some extra content into the first adventure. Mainly because I realized that my ranger character was going to start to get spells at second level. And I wanted to build in a relationship with the natural spirits so that it wouldn't be just and now I have magic. Because the spirits of the natural world are a thing in my campaign.
Sure.
So the first game ended up being dragged out. and last night's session, due to one thing and another, and an emergency appointment with a doctor had to be rescheduled. So we had not gotten to the end of the first adventure. And my players were one of my players was listening to the episode that came out yesterday, and immediately slammed on the stop button, or whatever passes for the stop button in whatever electronic device he was using.
Sure.
And started to yell at me in our personal chat room for nearly giving him spoilers. And then I had to ban them all from listening to that episode until next Thursday. Or actually next Friday. Yeah, so you got me in trouble, sir.
That, to be honest with you, sir, that sounds more like a you problem than a me problem.
You baited me. It was entrapment. I was entrapped into spoiling my game.
Sure. Whatever makes you sleep at night.
I wish something would.
If you're a player in the Angry GM's game.
Yeah. Oh.
First off, congratulations on the witness protection program you've apparently entered. And secondly, I don't know, maybe if you start talking about the game, you should stop listening. Or at least fast forward.
Can we afford to give up 4 whole listeners?
Just most podcast players now have like a skip 30 seconds button. You just hit that 5 or 6 times until you get to something that's clearly not about the game.
5 or 6 times. So we spend about 3 minutes on a topic. Really? That's your assessment of our podcast?
Look, you know what I'm saying. Use your own discretion, people. All right.
We're just gonna have to start putting spoiler tags for just my players.
Mm-hmm.
Killed my first player, by the way.
Character. Good. I mean, not good.
It didn't take.
Oh,
she survived.
Oh, okay.
But let me tell you something. There is a rule in D&D.
Mm-hmm.
So normally what happens when you take when you lose all your hit points, you're reduced to 0 hit points, you are unconscious, and you are dying, right? And then you start rolling death saves.
Mm-hmm.
3 successful death saves, you stabilize, and you no longer have to make any more death saves.
Right.
3 failed death saves, and you accumulate these, so you can roll.
Sure.
You roll a maximum of, I guess, 5 times, because the 6th time is either going to kill you or save you. And 3 accumulated failures, and your character dies. You actually die. But while you're down, if you take any damage, it counts as a failed save. Right?
Right.
And if the damage is a critical hit, it counts as... No, that's not right. Maybe it is. 2 failed saves if it's a critical hit? Maybe.
I don't know.
I did just review these damn rules, too.
I don't know, but it sounds like your GM's a jerk if that's happening.
If you take as much damage as like half your maximum, and I know I'm getting it wrong. It's either as much damage as your maximum hit points or as much damage as half your max. I think it's as much damage as your maximum hit points.
If you take enough damage that your GM starts laughing,
you die instantly, no matter what your death save situation is.
Right.
But here's the thing. While you are unconscious and disabled, attacks against you are automatically critical hits.
Uh-huh.
Right.
That sounds like a problem.
Well, I have discovered there's a particular issue because this is the second time I have killed a character this way.
Mm-hmm.
I have discovered that there is a particular issue with creatures with multi-attack who are unintelligent natural beasts.
Right.
Okay? Because if that first attack is the one that downs you, and nobody else is near the beast or threatening it, it does not make sense for the beast to break off from murdering the thing that dropped, especially if it's something that's looking to eat someone. You know what I mean?
Right.
So if hypothetically a hippogriff came screaming out of the sky and managed to rip someone apart with their talons to the point where they lay unconscious, critically injured, and dying,
right,
it stands to reason that the hippogriff would then at least take a bite.
Or fly you back to its nest.
Yeah, or fly you back. I'm not that mean. And then, of course,
okay.
And then, of course, the crit, the crit killed her. So
right.
She was dead.
Right.
Yeah, so because it was the first adventure and in the interest of that particular actually this might be you know what? I don't even care because 2 of the 4 players now know about this. So I'm going to actually tell you my secret death rule.
Okay. Now, if you're one of Angry's players,
this
is the time to fast forward.
Yeah, if you're the 2 angry players who have not yet encountered the secret death rule, you're now going to know the secret death rule. This is the death rule that I have been playing with since 4th edition. Okay? Because different people have different feelings on character death.
Mm-hmm.
Some people very much want to play where they let the dice fall where they may.
Right.
And if they kill your character, they kill your character. That's what was meant to be, and that's okay.
Right.
Some people feel that a character's journey is not over just because the dice said so, and that they wanted to keep exploring with their character. And
that's the ghost walk thing.
No, not that. Like, literally, their character's not ready to die. Or they're not ready to say goodbye to the character.
All right.
And if it's really going to ruin someone's enjoyment of the game to say, no, your character's dead, then, I actually can't be that much of an believe it or not. Okay. So ultimately, I came up with this rule to leave it in the hands of the player. When you are dying, whatever the rules say you have to do, whether it's rolling death saves or tracking bleeding hit points or whatever, you sit over at your little corner of the table and you do it quietly and tell no one else what is going on. Because until somebody gets over to you and can examine your body, they don't even know if you're still alive. They see you go down, and then, until someone can get over there and take a pulse, who knows? You could be alive, you could be dead.
Could just be a fainting spell.
Right. Which is nice because then the players treat people going down as more of an emergency than they used to when they know, oh, it's like I'm at -6 hit points now, I still got 4 rounds, ignore me and kill the monsters.
Right.
So you roll your dice, you do whatever. I don't even want to know what's going on. Okay? Until the moment someone gets over to you and checks on you. Okay? And then I look at the player and say, so, are you alive or are you dead? And the first time this happens, because I don't tell players this is the rule until the first time someone goes down, then I actually pull them out of the room and say, okay, this is actually what you have to do. You have to do this in secret. I'm going to ask you when someone gets over there, is your character alive or dead? You can give me and the party whatever answer you want. Yes, no, it's up to you. But you have to actually follow the rules. I want you to know whether mechanically your character died or not. And you don't even ever have to tell me. I don't even have to know that you lied. It's between you and the dice if you want to keep your character alive. And that's it. So, what I have found since the implementation of that rule, and of course there may be a little bit of selection bias in this, is I am a killer GM because I have seen a lot of characters die. And the players, they go with it. Because I have had, I think, only... it's been about 8 years now since I've started using that rule, I guess. 7 or 8 years.
Yeah.
I cannot recall a situation, I guess I don't know. Right? Because it's secret.
Right.
But the number of players who have let their characters die has been quite impressive. I figured that everybody would take the out. But I am glad in this particular case that she took the out. Because it was a very particularly brutal death in basically the second session of the campaign, with a character that had a lot of interesting possibilities, and that death would have sucked.
Yeah.
And because the party is still stranded on a desert island, then you have the whole issue of how do you get someone else in? Because I'm gonna be honest, I hate death too. Death is such an inconvenience to the game. And I would much rather there be an alternative. Not to the point where I want to take it away, though I did once run an entire campaign where the characters literally couldn't die. That was part of the pitch of the campaign. They kept coming back to life. And that was because a player dared me. Because I said, because it was after a series of particularly brutal adventures that ended in a vicious TPK. And we were sitting down figuring out what we wanted to do for the next campaign. Because the world ended in that one.
Sure.
That's the problem with chosen ones.
Yeah, world not saved.
Yep, world not saved. World ended, so there's no campaign here anymore. So, and I said, would you guys feel better if we, in fact, I think this, no. Would you guys feel better if I rewrote the rules so that death wasn't really as big an option? And the one player, he looked at me, he's like, if you can't die, what's the point of playing it? So you couldn't make a game compelling like that. I said, challenge accepted.
Oh dear, they have no idea, do they?
Well, it's like the line, like, what was it, the sequel to Aladdin, where everybody kept telling evil Jafar, the genie, well, genies can't kill people. And he looks at and he has one line response. It's like, yeah, but you'd be surprised what you can live through. Mm-hmm. And that's what happened. It got really brutal. Especially because they were being resurrected for unknown reasons by a mystical artifact that everybody in the city wanted control of. And if anybody ever found it, they didn't know what would happen to them. They didn't even know who they were anymore, because they just kept getting resurrected and sometimes reincarnated, and they kept having memories that weren't theirs. So yeah. So suddenly now they had to keep this fact that they kept coming back to life a secret. And it made it very, very difficult. It's like, didn't I kill you? So yeah, so never challenge a GM to take death out of the game, because they can do it.
Just never challenge your GM, frankly.
Right? Yeah, never dare your GM anything.
Come on, smarten up. Monday. I put out, because I was bored and I was tired and I just wasn't thinking straight. I put out a tweet. And it said, let's make an adventure.
And now a publisher wants you to publish that adventure.
No.
Sorry.
And I kind of walked through the steps of adventure making, or at least tried to. There was a point there about 2/3 of the way through where apparently everybody either went home or lost interest. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But anyway, we got pretty far into it, and I had enough to work with. And so, was it Wednesday? Mm. Wednesday, I put out notice that I had completed a write-up of said adventure based on their input.
Really?
Yes. Not a full write-up. It doesn't have any stats or anything like that. It's just the outline of the story, right? Mm-hmm. More or less. And so now at 5 pages, there is an outline for this adventure that everybody helped put together, more or less. Oh. And I think it's pretty cool, actually.
Oh, wow. That sounds neat. Yeah. What are you going to do with it?
I don't know.
I mean, I don't mean publish the damn thing, but
yeah.
Sorry, Angry Games Incorporated is not accepting any further submissions at this time.
Oh, okay. I don't know, but if people want to see what happened with it, they can drop me a message or whatever, and I will give them a link to the Dropbox where it lives. But it came out pretty good. It was one of those things where the central conflict was supposed to be man against himself, and I think I really did accomplish that one. I would say that it's kind of Sword and Planet. I mean, I don't have all that in there. I don't have all that detail in there yet to make that really happen.
Right.
But it's there. But I mean, if you wanted to take this and make a full-fledged adventure out of it, I wouldn't stop you. I think it's a good write-up, and will be interesting. There's boats and ports and secret cities and strange people and all kinds of stuff in it. So if you're interested, drop me a line and I will hook you up with it. There you go.
I've actually started a little adventure building project of my own.
Have you?
Yeah, and I'm just going to tease it for now. I'm sure I'll have more to say on it in a future episode. But looking through the Dungeon Master's Guide of 5th edition, I have actually started to dial back on some of my criticism of it.
Oh?
I'm not saying that it is not a terribly arranged pile of random kludge that is about 3 times as long as it needs to be. But I think if you boil it down, I have actually noticed that there is some stuff in there that if you were to get rid of all the garbage and put it in the right order, would actually would be useful game mastering tools.
Oh.
And so as an experiment, I have sat down, or I have started to sit down, or I, intend to.
You are still in the process of sitting down.
Yes, I'm still in the process of finding a chair. But once I find a chair, I am going to sit down and I am going to build an adventure using their lists, random tools, and their adventure advice, their encounter building advice, everything exactly as written, to see what would actually come out if I followed these instructions.
Okay.
And I'm actually fairly convinced, believe it or not, it won't be garbage. Which, given my previous statements on the 5th edition Dungeon Master's Guide, is high praise indeed.
So you might be having to issue some retractions.
Let's not go crazy here.
Okay.
I still stand by everything I have actually said.
All right.
But, it's like, here's the thing. Okay? They gave me... That book is a gigantic metal tool chest that is filled with a combination of tools and miscellaneous spare parts from a junkyard.
Okay.
My only conjecture here, I mean, I don't argue that that's a terrible way to give me a Dungeon Master's Guide. I don't need a box of miscellaneous tools and random spare parts from a junkyard. Okay? But I actually am now starting to believe that if I dig through the box, I can actually find enough useful tools in good working order to actually assemble a decent toolkit for my home, if that makes sense.
Sure.
And then I can take all the other stuff and dump it on the sidewalk and leave it there. All right? So I'm not saying that the book is good. The book is still terrible. But there's actually probably a useful hammer and a Phillips head screwdriver and a flathead screwdriver and I don't know, an angle grinder. What are tools?
Sure. Why not?
Yeah. I think there's actually stuff in there that would be useful for a project. It's just digging through that whole giant box. And why in this box, is there like a rusted carburetor from an 1987 Chevy? Man, I could not get that date out, But they threw it in there.
Yeah.
Thanks for that.
All I can tell you is my attempt at building a random dungeon using the random dungeon generator stuff.
Oh, I'm not going near that random dungeon thing where it's like, okay, there's a 10-foot room here and a hallway. No, I'm not that dumb.
That was amusing, to say the
least. But that's an appendix anyway.
I don't have enough paper for this dungeon in that direction, apparently. Counselor Malachi wrote into the website at digressionsandragons.com on episode 21, where we asked you guys a bunch of questions. He chose to answer or to provide information on two of the questions we asked.
Wait a minute. This is what because I've been trying to understand these tweets where people have been saying, "Oh, question 1," and then.
Oh, you've been getting tweets.
Tweets. Because, no, messages somewhere.
Oh, direct messages. Because people don't know how to follow instructions,
right?
Because we did say on the. Never mind. Anyway, point being, question number 1 was, who else? What other actor, when they appear on screen, do you know immediately they're going to die at some point? And Counselor Malachi said, Christopher Lee has a surprising number of movie deaths. I don't know that surprising is the word I'd use. Because he was in all those Hammer films playing Dracula. And I'm pretty sure in the Hammer films, if you play Dracula, it's pretty much dead certain that you have to die by the end.
Yeah, until Anne Rice came along and started the sexy vampire thing. If you were anybody playing Dracula, you were, the plot point was, and then Dracula dies and everybody else lives happily ever after.
Right. But I will grant you that Christopher Lee does have a large number of movie deaths, and that it is reasonable to look at him appearing on screen and say, this man is going to die.
Fair enough.
Not in everything, but then we never said everything. We just said a lot. Okay, and question number 2. Survey question number 2, which was, what was the show or thing I was thinking about that was related to Frequency, the movie?
The show that you said reminded you of Frequency, that had a similar premise to Frequency.
Correct. Counselor Malachi has replied to that question, says, I was laughing when Fiddleback talked about them using the Frequency idea in a recent show, since that TV show was actually a remake of the Frequency movie and was called Frequency. It was terrible.
Why would they remake that movie? Just go watch the movie. The movie was good.
Why would they remake it as a TV show?
I mean, that's what I meant. I'm sorry. As a TV show. Why would they remake it as a TV show?
I have no idea. But I was right.
But then they remake everything.
They do. It's terrible.
I was just watching Georg Rockall-Schmidt, I guess, who we talked about last time. Mm-hmm. He had a very interesting video about the rise of the high concept film and increasing cynicism in Hollywood. It was a very good analysis.
Cool.
Yeah.
I will reference that in the show notes. To be fair, Counselor Malachi was not the only one to point out that the show I was thinking of was called Frequency, but he was the first. So thank you to everybody who replied to that. There was also a large number of other replies, not so much to question 3, but to question 4, which, if you recall, was, what should we name this fictional real land that we have all these ambassadors and ministers of?
Right.
I have to tell you, the voting wasn't even really close. In fact, the winner by a large margin is Digress a Lot. And we have, I just sampled some of the responses we got, and I kind of have to throw it up to Matthew, whose name is a bit of a problem on the website. Because if I were to give Matthew the title he's earned and include the name he is on the website with, I would then have to call him something like Minister Ambassador Matthew. And you can see how confusing that would be.
I thought something... Oh, he misspelled, he misnamed himself. He misidentified himself.
I don't know.
He's... Oh, look, wait.
Look, we're getting some feedback on this whole minister, ambassador, chargé d'affaires, counselor thing, which I'm not prepared to deal with yet. But I would urge you to prepare yourself to deal with it.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah.
Anyway, I do love inventing systems.
Yes, indeed. So anyway, Matthew said he's voting digress a lot because, I mean, you do, and this does seem to be a rather silly place.
It's only a model.
So there you go. That's what you are. That's where you're from. Digress a lot, which makes you Digressolotions.
Which, frankly, is the only reason why I want to digress a lot to win, because I like Digressolotions. now we have to refer to everyone as the Digressolation charge d'affaires Matthew, or whatever.
Right. This whole thing is getting out of hand. But anyway.
Excellent. My plans are coming to fruition.
Brilliant. Kind of a short feedback section because most everybody was voting on things. So there you go. That's the feedback.
I'm disappointed there weren't more people who have had a surprising number of movie deaths.
Well, I suspect there are, but nobody seems to be answering that question, really.
I guess sort of the voting on our national character.
Right.
So it took over.
It was, I would say it was the more important issue for most people. That was definitely the thing they were most interested in. I mean, to heck with that dice control stuff. This is what they want to do is name themselves.
Oh my, but I have to apologize to you, sir.
Oh?
Yeah, I just, out of curiosity, clicked on the link for episode 21, and I am looking at the show notes.
Uh-huh.
Because we were really all over the place.
Yes, we were.
I am so sorry.
We got called out on that, too.
The show notes have reached a point of ridiculousness?
No, that the show was a bit all over the place.
Did we?
Yes. Something we will address by having a shorter feedback section in this episode.
So that we can discuss more random topics on our own.
That's right.
Actually, okay, let me ask you a question, speaking of our commercial. Because I was actually in anticipation of having to commercial, browsing through their product line.
Yes.
And I have been reminded of something. They have this shirt. By the way, Gamer Concepts, they sell shirts, which I have
GamerConcepts.com!
GamerConcepts.com, they sell shirts and other stuff. There is a shirt that they have which depicts a number of ranged weapons, including a crossbow, what appears to be a musket rifle of some variety, a modern, that could be a submachine gun or an assault rifle, I don't know, and then a blaster rifle. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
And it says it's always the right time to shoot NPCs. Does this actually happen to anybody?
I don't know. I'll tell you what. Everybody who's listening to this, run over to Gamer Concepts at GamerConcepts.com and buy one of these shirts and do some field research for us. Report back in when you're done.
And when you buy the shirt, tell them that we sent you.
I understand WotC has been busy again.
I guess in a manner of speaking.
Okay.
They have fulfilled their regular obligation to crank out unofficial test content, which eventually 3 years from now they will compile into I don't know what wizards are going to be left at that point. Tasha's hideous, uncontrollable book of random garbage we had sitting around on desks.
Oh, okay. I can't wait for that one.
Yeah, right. But so it only caught my interest. Well, actually, a lot of people were sending it to me. Thank you, but very much everybody, because I had been toying with the wilderness travel rules in my campaign, and had been talking about them a bit in my Discord chat. And so suddenly everybody was like, "Hey, look, Wizards of the Coast put out this, these." It's basically. It's an extension for the rules for wilderness travel in the DM's guide and the player's handbook.
Okay.
But
I thought you already fixed that for him.
I sort of did. In fact, I have done so both unofficially and also in articles on my website.
Okay.
But here's the thing, like, they didn't really fix much anyway.
All right, so what did they do?
Well, so their statement was that primarily the issue is that the wilderness travel rules in the Player's Handbook and Dungeon Master's Guide are basically meant for the characters hour by hour sort of dinking around in the wilderness, as it were. That's D-I-N-K, lest I get accused of using a bad word.
Okay.
When really what they should do is they want to travel and navigate across the country. You know, they're moving between locations or whatever. They're focused not on the travel itself, but on the destination. Right? And so these rules are meant to replace those rules with better rules for navigation and how to, you know, basically travel between 2 points on a map. Which is exactly what the Player's Handbook and the Dungeon Master's Guide did.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? In the end, they did not add much beyond a few really, like, it's sort of like they added this concept called a navigation DC, which is how hard it is to get from location A to location B, right? Based on, you know, without getting lost. Which, okay, fine and dandy. But basically all it comes down, because there was already rules for navigation in the book.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And it's based on how difficult it is to find the location. So what this assumes is that there is a location somewhere out in the wilderness, and the players have anything between a clear road or trail to literally no knowledge of the exact location, and also powerful magic and regional effects may have caused the location to be completely concealed to everybody in the world.
Unfindable.
Right, but and if you roll a navigation check DC 30, bam, you found it.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, right? So, I mean, that's what they boiled they didn't do anything interesting with it. All they did was just make a more complex table for navigation.
Okay.
Okay, fine, because they're very, very focused on, you know, the wilderness is just about getting from point A to point B. The travel tasks thing, which was already in the game, I actually kind of like the way they did that, and I have been using it myself. You know, so when the party sets out and they're crossing the wilderness, you know, the different group members, they choose a rank to travel in, front rank, rear rank, or, you know, somewhere in the middle, and they can engage in different tasks while they're traveling. So, like, someone can forage while you're traveling, and someone navigates, and someone keeps a map, and the people who aren't engaged in specific tasks, they're keeping watch, so their perception keeps the party alerted to any danger and whatever. And then, depending on the speed, the party has different options. And I actually thought that was sort of an interesting skeleton for a wilderness travel system that they could have really just built out. Especially because the speed at which the party moves changes the tasks they can do and how hard the tasks are. So you can't forage while you're moving too fast. And if you're moving slow, you can move stealthily. But obviously you move slower so that you have a bigger chance of random encounters. You know, but they didn't really change much. And the other thing they did was that they added this sort of rule where, you know, if you're moving through difficult terrain, you could use different skills than survival to navigate. So, like, you know, if you're moving through broken hills and mountains, you could use athletics to navigate, which does not make any sense because that's not navigation, that's traversal. But whatever. The problem is there's no choice involved. It's just your DM saying, okay, now use this skill instead.
Uh-huh.
You know, The best thing they did do was actually say, hey, maybe what you should do is break your world down into regions. And then assign each of those regions a character. And a little bit, assign specific DCs there for like foraging in this particular region is difficult, and navigating is difficult, and, or navigating is less difficult, and come up with some descriptors that you can use as the party is traveling, and maybe even some tactical terrain features if you have to suddenly generate a random encounter location on the fly, right? And that's actually kind of useful advice. My problem with that advice is I gave that advice like a friggin' year ago. When I said, hey, here's a way you could actually make travel a little bit more interesting by turning your map into a patchwork of regions and assigning, features to those regions so that the party choosing to, okay, we're going to travel to this location, but we need to take a direct route because we have to get there fast. And we're going to go through the hills of death, and obviously the hills of death, apart from just being hills, they have interesting features that the GM has a framework to assign, whereas if the party takes the long way around the hills of death through the valley of peacefulness, then obviously everything's a lot easier, but now they're moving, they're going to take a longer trip and they're going to need more supplies, but they can make up for that by moving faster, but then they can't forage on the way, and they might blunder into encounters. So suddenly there's all these dynamic choices because all these little systems are interacting. And they only got like halfway there. So they're clearly reading my blog, stealing my material, and then only kind of half-assing it. And I don't know which part offends me more.
I have to ask a really, really terrible question.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now I want you to pretend to be my GM for a moment.
Fine.
Okay?
I can do that.
Walk me through the wilderness travel phase. Just, as a GM, make sure I've done all the steps, okay?
Okay. Well, first of all, so you have declared an action, first of all, because we don't just aren't traveling. Right. So you have to tell me something like, okay, we're going to set out from town, and we are going to follow the road to the Dungeon of Misery.
Okay, here we go.
Right?
We're going to set out from town, and I'm going to follow the road to the big bad evil guy's temple.
Okay, fine. Fair enough. So who's taking up the front rank? Who's taking up the rear rank?
Oh, whoever, whatever.
Fine.
Actually, okay. It's just that first part I have the problem with.
What?
There's no requirement that says I have to know anything about the destination.
Well, no, because you're following a road.
Or anything about, literally, I might not even know who the big bad guy is.
Well, okay. That was totally a trick question.
but I could just say I'm going to go to wherever the big bad guy is, right?
No, you can't.
Why not? It's a destination.
Well, it's not a destination. You have to have a destination.
Okay, it's the big bad guy's house. I'll check his mail.
Well, no, see, here's the thing. Okay, the way I'm running it,
mm-hmm.
you not only do you have to have a destination, you have to have a way to get to that destination.
Oh.
Okay? If you're going to the Pyramid of Ixtlilith in the middle of the Desert of Sorrows,
uh-huh.
My question is going to be, how are you going to get there? How are you navigating? Okay? And if the only thing you know about it is that it's west of the city for 6 days into the desert, then that'll get you into the neighborhood. This is the way I run it. This isn't the way D&D, clear. So the way D&D says do it, okay. So, let's say, so destination is hit, so that would be a navigation DC 20. So you would say to me, I want to set out, we're going to set out and we're going to go to the pyramid in the middle of the desert. I would say, okay. Fine, who's your navigator? Who's going to pick the way through the terrain?
Well, whoever has the highest navigation skill.
Right, exactly. And then, then I'm going to ask you, marching order just so that that's settled. And, and then obviously everybody's keeping watch unless somebody says I want to forage. And then I laugh at them because it's a desert. Sure. And then they say, I'm a ranger with favored terrain deserts. And I say, okay, fair enough. Jerk. Fine. You win this round. So then you set out, and the navigator rolls a navigation check, wisdom survival check, DC 20.
Right.
And if you roll it, then in 6 days you reach the pyramid of whatever ridiculous name I said.
Okay.
That's the end of it.
Fine.
If you don't, you end up lost.
Okay. I'm okay with that.
And then things end up sort of vague from there.
All right.
Because then travel becomes sort of now I have to keep track of your location and track where you actually are and where you think you are, because you're lost now and your travel is in random directions, and there's a table for this too. So, but I have something similar going on in my world. But it's like, if you have a road or a trail or something to follow, then fine. If you don't, but you think you know where your destination is, well, then you're going to have to pick the direction and try to keep on it. And that'll get you in the ballpark. And then I actually have rules set up for searching in an area of the terrain for a landmark.
Okay,
that is, so now you're in the woods, this temple is in the woods somewhere, and you know pretty much that it's 1 day's trek north of the river, or 10 miles north of the river, or whatever. So you get yourself vaguely in that ballpark, and then the party can spend time actually just wandering. And not wandering, but, looking for it. And then, of course, the party can do things to make it easier. They can cast spells, the divination spells that will help them find it. Or somebody can climb a particularly high tree and see if they can see it. And I actually have rules that I've developed for spotting terrain features from a distance. Because some things, even if you only vaguely know where they are, they're easy to find. For example, lighthouses. Lighthouses are easy to spot from a distance. That's what they're designed to do, So if you're out at sea and you're trying to navigate to a port city, you can see that lighthouse from fairly far away. A tower on top of a hill, easy to find. Over moderately flat rolling terrain like meadows or plains, as long as there's some bits of elevation, it's pretty easy to spot a town from from a reasonable distance, and a major walled city is going to stand out, but it makes the navigation itself not so much a puzzle or a problem or something to be puzzled out as, well, we know it's out there, we're just going to roll a die roll and find it. Whereas I actually force my players, okay, you want to go to this location and vaguely where it is, you can go wander out there and hope you stumble over it. And the more information you have about where it is, you can get closer and closer, and then you're actually likely to stumble over it. But otherwise, you're going to have to get a guide or get directions or get a map, or find some other way to find it.
Right.
Unless, and there is also, right now my party is mapping an unmapped island. That's just because they're trying to figure out which island they're on, and they have a decent chart of the islands in their area. And so what they're trying to do is map enough of this island to match it up to one of the islands they know. It's a navigation puzzle. It's like, oh, okay, there's these big hills here, and then there's this forest here, and that can only be this island. At least now we know where we are. That kind of a thing. So that the navigation actually becomes sort of an interesting thought puzzle.
Sure. But we are in agreement, right? That you don't make them navigate unless there's a reason for them to navigate. That adds something, right? That you don't just slap this into every adventure. Oh, you're going somewhere. We're using the navigation rules now and overland travel and blah, 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 you know?
No. Well, like I said, my campaign is focused on exploration.
Yes.
Okay, it's an exploration-based campaign. So we're going to have wilderness travel and mapping and all of that stuff and discovering places that no one has ever seen before.
Right, because it makes sense to do so.
Right, that's what is happening in my game. I wouldn't advise using this sort of crap in every campaign. And honestly, it can really suck the fun out of a lot of campaigns. And that's advice that really should be given too. Like if your game is about a group of heroes who plunder, the dungeon of the week every week, and they just want to go get to the dungeon and have some fun, just narrate the travel. The wilderness travel is not the fun part.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? It really isn't.
Right.
So cut it out. If you don't have a good reason to make the wilderness interesting, and this is what bothers me about these rules, is the design purpose that is stated. Because as they were written up, who wrote this? I don't know. It's the introduction to these rules is written in the first person. And it said, what I noticed in my own campaigns, though, was that players tended to focus primarily on their destinations in wilderness travel. In a dungeon, players think in terms of opening the door to the east or investigating the passage to the north. Their choices are tactical in nature and based on the immediate environment. Adventurers might be seeking a lost shrine in a dungeon, but the decisions they make along the way are important and interesting. In the wilderness, most situations allow the characters to travel in any direction they choose. Their choices are circumstantial rather than tactical, yada, yada, yada. And basically, so what they're saying is, we notice that people aren't interested in exploring the wilderness. And our rules allowed people to explore the wilderness, so we've created these new rules that take away the exploration element and make it just about roll some dice to get there. And narrate the interesting things that happen on the way. And to me, that seems sort of backwards. To me, it's like, if you have noticed that people aren't engaging with this part of the game, then either you need to make that part of the game engaging, find a reason to make it interesting to explore the wilderness, or just cut out that part of the game. Maybe you don't need the wilderness travel rules if all your players are interested in is, we just want to get to where we're going. We don't care about the random stuff on the way. Because random encounters on the way to the adventure are a distraction anyway. Unless the wilderness is the adventure, most of this stuff is just, can we just go to the vampire castle and kill the vampire now? Yes, it's very interesting that we found these ancient megaliths and they're haunted and we can deal with this ghost, but we're supposed to be killing a vampire and we really like to just get on with that now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that was kind of my point with the earlier thing, is that there's no particular restriction on what your destination can be under these rules.
Well, you
can literally say, I would rather go fight the vampire now than wander around doing whatever else is out there to do. Right.
I mean, the thing is, people don't play D&D to wander around Skyrim. They want to get to the fun.
Yeah. Yes, that would be my destination. I want to go where the fun is.
Right.
So,
or alternatively, if you're playing in a game where the premise is the exploring the wilderness is fun, and there's stuff to turn up, and there's enough that's done that your decisions in the wilderness empower you to handle your own survival and locate things that you might have heard of or whatever, then you'll engage with that. Then it does become like exploring the dungeon.
Mm-hmm.
What really disappoints me most of all is that they didn't do more with these rules. There's just not much to them. They don't change much. And it's like you're calling this, a content that overlays the official rules, and you have your warning, this is unofficial material, it's for playtesting. It's like, it's not really that different. Don't be afraid of it. It's,
right.
You added one extra die roll. Really is what they did. And told people, maybe break your world down into regions and describe it like that.
Yeah, we'll see which book this turns up in, and then
Yeah.
whether it comes in its form that it currently is.
Yeah.
I suspect not.
Well, if it does, it'll take about 3 years. That seems to be the cycle for Unearthed Arcana stuff.
Oh, yeah, great. So no reason to panic yet.
I wanted your opinion on something.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, as my, since we have done a number of analyses of everything that is wrong with current pop culture and media.
Sure.
Tiny and I had a brief, interesting conversation that I thought would be interesting to discuss here.
Okay.
Okay?
I'm all ears.
Okay. So, the background for this is that if you take heroic stories,
mm-hmm.
you can sort of break the heroes, or the protagonists down, I guess I should call them, into two basic types. Okay? Which I'm going to call the Everyman hero, which, of course, Everyman is every person, but that's awkward to say, but it's inclusive. So, the Everyman hero, which is, the person who starts off from humble beginnings, like Bilbo Baggins, or Frodo Baggins, and ends up thrust into an adventure, is not by themselves equipped to handle the adventure at first, and have to work hard and turn themselves into the hero that they become at the end of the story. You follow?
Yep, with you so far.
Right. The humble beginnings hero. Then you have the chosen one heroes. Okay, the Harry Potter. The hero who, through their birth or fate or destiny or chance or plot contrivance, is the one who is going to resolve the problem. They begin the story, while they may have some flaws to overcome, generally they begin the story already with the knowledge already, at least in the reader's mind, that they are going to be the hero. That part is not questioned. They don't need to become the hero. They don't need to make themselves the hero. They are the hero through birth. Or, whatever it is that chose them. And Harry Potter is like the perfect example, because he literally was born to kill Voldemort. Or obviously wasn't born to kill Voldemort, except that he was born from the two hero wizards who were the only heroes to defy Voldemort 3 times, and then he was born, and then his mother saved his life when he was a baby, and that let him survive the killing curse that nobody else survived, but that also gave him Voldemort's powers, so that he was the only one who could kill Voldemort, right? And that's set out in the backstory,
mm-hmm.
right? That's a chosen one hero. Have you noticed that more and more heroes of late are chosen ones, and that the Everyman hero seems to have gone away?
Kind of. See, I'm thinking of chosen one heroes. I kind of have trouble putting, well, maybe I don't. I'm just thinking through a bunch of different heroes and trying to classify them as we sit here.
Yeah, I admit that it is tricky to find the division between them.
Right. Like, what would you call Neo out of the Matrix? Because he's not a chosen one hero.
Well, no, he really isn't. I mean, you could say he was, because he was programmed to be what he is, or well, I don't know. I sort of lost the whole thread of the postmodernist deconstruction of the hero myth that they were trying to do instead of writing the sequel to that movie.
Mm-hmm.
But he was not at the start a hero. He had to turn himself into the hero, and at any time he could have turned away and he could have failed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if he had failed, I don't know, if he had failed, would someone else have come along? Could it have been anyone except Neo?
I feel like it...
In the And what was he equipped with? He was equipped with martial arts skills that they gave him, and the ability to perceive the world as an illusion that they taught him.
He didn't really have anything more special than anybody else, as far as I can tell.
Right, precisely.
I mean, Morpheus was clearly, oh, you're the chosen one, but there was, he never explained why that was.
Yeah. Yeah, no, okay. It was actually kind of weird. But, so, I have a few examples.
Okay.
This one's going to drive everybody crazy. Okay.
Alrighty.
The new Ninja Turtles from the Michael Bay movies. Okay.
All right.
Versus the old Ninja Turtles. The old Ninja Turtles were mutated by accident.
Uh-huh.
They were trained by the rat, Splinter, in the ninja arts because he wanted revenge on someone who had wronged him. Mm-hmm. So, of course, he adopted these teenagers and trained them to be killers because that's what a good parent does.
Right.
And then forbade them from going out into the world because he convinced him that the world would be terrified of them and the only place they were safe was with him.
Right.
Okay.
No manipulation there whatsoever.
Right. Apart from the whole accidental mutation thing, any group of 4 animals would do. Literally, if 4 sewer urchin, or like 4 street urchin children, I guess in modern New York City we shouldn't call them street urchins anymore, right? But
probably not.
But like 4 homeless children who he adopted could have filled the same role, right? He could have trained them in martial arts, do the same thing.
Right.
The new Ninja Turtles in the Michael Bay movie were deliberate lab mutations. Mm-hmm. By the person who was formerly the arch enemy of the Rat and his evil company. And April O'Neil, their friend, the reporter she was a reporter again in that one because she's gone a couple of different ways. And April O'Neil was the daughter of the good scientist who discovered that the evil scientist was misusing his research and then got killed. So all of this, they were all inextricably tied to the plot of the movie by their backstory. All of that everything that happened in the first Michael Bay Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie could not have happened to anybody but those 4 because of the accident of the situation that created them. Do you follow what I mean?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Okay. The Sam Raimi Spider-Man versus the Amazing Spider-Man. Was it the Amazing Spider-Man?
Yeah, the Sam Raimi version, literally anybody could have been bitten by that spider.
Right. He was a worthless schlub until he was the one who blundered into the spider. Mm-hmm. And what made it really interesting is that when he first gets his powers in the Sam Raimi movie, his first thought is, how can I use these powers to get enough money to buy a car to impress a girl? Mm-hmm. Right? He's not a hero.
No.
He's a kid who suddenly has powers, and he uses it he starts off on wish fulfillment. I'm going to beat up the bully, I'm going to get the girl, I'm going to get a car. All the teenage fantasies. And it's only when terrible things happen that he turns himself into the hero, but he very easily could have gone the other way. He could have just been a jerk forever. Mm-hmm. He has to have the strength of character to make that choice. The Amazing Spider-Man, although he was accidentally mutated by the spider, it turns out that his father was working in the company that developed the spider thing, and there was this whole secret project of animal mutations going on, and the whole mystery of it all was tied back to his father.
Sounds like I'm really glad that I didn't actually go see that.
It wasn't terrible. The first one wasn't terrible. I didn't see The Amazing Spider-Man 2. But again, so now you have a chosen one. No other character could have fit into that movie because they have to have all those connections through the nature of the way they were born. The third one, and this is a little bit tricky, Luke Skywalker versus Rey, whatever her last name is, Fett?
What?
What the hell is Rey's last name in Force Awakens? And
She doesn't have one as far as I know.
Oh, okay, right. Rey Skywalker. Right. Okay.
Oh.
One could argue, and I'm just talking about Star Wars Episode 1 or Episode 4, the good one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because in that movie, Luke Skywalker actually was not special.
Wasn't he?
Not really.
Wasn't he?
Was he?
Well,
the only thing he had going for him was his piloting skills. He was a pretty good pilot, right? What, you gonna bring up the Force thing?
Yes.
But could it have been anyone? Anyone who was willing to believe?
No, I don't think so.
Considering only what we knew of the Force in the first movie.
Ah, well, that's a different question.
Well, but that's when it was written.
Okay, all right.
It could have been anyone, because all we knew of the Force was that it was this mysterious ancient religious order that literally anyone could learn.
Mm-hmm.
Right? In fact, that was the whole point of it, is that the Force is in everyone. Right? The Force moves through us all. Yoda says that all. The Force is in all of us. We are luminous beings, not this crude matter. Okay? Anybody could do it. And literally, there is a whole Jedi order that was devoted to the idea that anyone could do it until midichlorians. Right? And midichlorians actually represented the shift from anybody who did the training and had the faith and the dedication could become a Jedi to, no, you have to be born with it. It has to be in your blood. And I think that's what made the midichlorians so disappointing. So Luke Skywalker was, yes, he did have a connection to Darth Vader. But if it hadn't been, like, if somebody else had bought R2-D2 and ended up meeting Ben Kenobi, and they were just as adventurous as Luke Skywalker, could they have been in that movie? They wouldn't have had the personal ire with Darth Vader, but that really didn't even play into things until later on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Whereas
if you take episode 4 all by itself, forget 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
If you take 4 all by itself, then yeah, okay, he's an everyman.
Well, even if you take 5 and 6, I still say that it supports the idea that what he did was turn himself into a Jedi. With the help of Yoda and Obi-Wan Kenobi and everything else. He played into the villain's plots eventually started to include him because they realized who he was. But, that you can chalk up to the expanding scope of the universe. But if you just compare Luke Skywalker as he was written, as he was created, to Rey or Anakin Skywalker as they were created, you go from this idea that anybody could be this hero to you have to be born into it. Do you follow what I'm saying? I know that's a little bit more tenuous. I'll admit that one's tenuous. Yeah. Okay, because as soon as you involve Force and destiny, there is a chosen one component to it.
Uh-huh.
But I would still say that those movies could have happened. The first, Luke, anybody could have been the hero of the first 3 Star Wars movies. It wouldn't have been as personal, which made it interesting and engaging. But there was nothing that was implied to be special about Luke that made him the only one who could save the galaxy. In point of fact, he wasn't even the only one to attack the Death Star.
Right.
And he didn't, the second Death Star, he couldn't blow it up alone. He wasn't even involved in blowing up the second Death Star. He was busy working out his daddy issues and his anger issues, while the other heroes were saving the galaxy. And I mean, then was Han Solo a chosen one?
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
And I have started to notice a shift in it, and it makes me sad. Because what really makes me sad about it is that there used, like, in all of these stories, like, if you look at The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, okay? The Hobbit was you. Frodo was you, Bilbo was you. Right? Little short schlub living off in their sheltered corner of the world, having no concept of everything that was going on around them in the world until they are pulled into it. And then, through their own resolve and cunning and whatever, they become the hero. Because anybody could. They just have to work at it. Anybody could be the hero. Look at Ghostbusters. Those are the last people you would expect to be heroes. Right? And in the end, they became heroes. They had to decide that there was something more important than money and scams and getting women and doing science just because they could. And in the end, they did, because they were willing to sacrifice their lives to save the city. That's when they crossed the streams, they were deciding that saving the city was more important than their lives, which is something that not one of them had believed before that. But they also could have been anyone. The proof of that is Winston was along. Winston was literally just a guy hired off the street. Those heroes could have been anyone. You know? So, and the whole chosen one idea is sort of this, like, well, you could be the hero because if you're born special. But then I guess that plays into the lie that we tell people now, that they're all born special, right? You know,
well, this is kind of the point I was eventually going to make if you didn't.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Which is, well, no, that's fine. It's that art of any kind, whether that's paintings or sculptures or movies or books or whatever,
right,
is often reflective of the society around it.
Mm-hmm.
But we have sort of entered a phase in which the individual is special, regardless of who that individual is, where they come from, or what they are, or anything like that.
You are born special.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. Whereas previously, the idea was that
if you want to be special, work at it.
Anyone could be special if they wanted to put in the effort.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So inasmuch as art reflects the society around it, then I'm going with, you get a lot more chosen ones now.
Yeah.
But I don't think that the idea of the everyman hero has been entirely abandoned. I just think the circumstances in which you see it has changed.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get as many everyman heroes in really big blockbuster movies.
Right.
But you do get a lot more everyman, quote unquote, heroes in comedies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, is that where you want them, though?
I don't know. I don't really know. But I'm also wary of the presumption as well, because of something we've talked about before, which is sort of the little bubble we exist in.
Uh-huh.
And I'm just wondering if it's a case of not getting far enough outside that bubble to see what the situation really is.
I guess that's true. And the other problem I'm going to admit is this is something that I've been muddling over my head for a couple of weeks before I started talking about it to Tiny, and then it turned into an interesting conversation I thought we could have.
Mm-hmm.
But once you have a theory, you become really, really susceptible to confirmation bias.
Oh, yes. Yeah. You'll notice that theory everywhere.
Yeah, I'm probably noticing it a lot more.
Right.
But, I mean, really interestingly, though, the first real instance I noticed of it was actually a long time ago. And it was in Metroid Prime. So I've talked about the Metroid series before.
Mm-hmm.
And in the early games, the main character, Samus Aran, is a mysterious bounty hunter who has basically a powered armor suit, and she is called in by the Galactic Federation to deal with problems they can't deal with. And she is one of a number of bounty hunters called the Space Hunters that they call in. But she just happens to be the best. Right?
Okay.
And that's the beginning and the end. And in fact, she didn't have a backstory or a past in the first couple of games, which is sort of what made her cool. That was part of the aspect of her. That's why nobody knew she was a woman. You know, the first game surprised you with, oh, by the way, she was a woman. And that was a double revelation because nobody knew who she was. You know, it wasn't just, oh my God, it was a woman all along. Because, you know, I was there when we found that out. It was not actually a big deal. It's like, oh, that's cool. Neat. You know? But beyond that, it was the revelation that nobody in the galaxy knew who she was or where she had come from or anything else. But beyond that, there was nothing special about her except for the fact that, you know, she had a bunch of equipment and she was really good at using it. And presumably she had trained herself and taught herself to be that. And then you play the Metroid Prime series and you discover that she was raised by this alien race, the Chozo. And I realized this was in a comic first before they made it the major plot point of the Metroid Prime series. But she was raised by this group of psychic alien birds who could see the future, and they saw the downfall of their own planet, and they trained her to come back someday and save their planet and the whole galaxy from the terrible threat. Right? And I did not have the language at the time to say, because this was GameCube, so 98, 99, 2000. I didn't really have the language to express why that suddenly disappointed me. But now, in looking back at that incident, it was 2002. Looking back in that and realizing that this plot was, oh, she was born to this, it did bother me, and now I think it's because she went from being, well, anybody could have been Samus, but she was Samus. To, oh, she was born to do this, and they armed her, and all of her equipment and everything else was set up purposely so that she would discover it when she needed it. You know, it's, you know, like, so I guess since 2002, this has been rattling around in the back of my head.
It's interesting.
It is.
It's interesting, and it has prompted a question in my head that we don't have time to answer.
Okay. Well, we can answer it another time.
Yeah, it was kind of related.
Okay.
I'm just going to I'll tell you what, I'm going to throw it out there, and the listeners can write in and tell me what they think the answer is.
Oh, and then it'll give us something to discuss in a future episode.
Sure.
Okay.
So here we go. Here's the question. And keep in mind, if this has been dealt with in like one of the Marvel What If series or whatever, I don't care about that. I'm interested in what everybody's personal opinion of the matter is. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So if Peter Parker stops the robber that otherwise would eventually end up killing his Uncle Ben, does he still become Spider-Man?
I like that question. Though, of course, there's fan fiction of it, and probably 6 different Marvel or alternate universes, as you said, that have already answered that question.
I'm sure. But I'm asking our listeners. I'm asking our listeners to answer that question because I want to see what they think. I want to see what they think.
I actually finished callback again. I finished reading Murder on the Orient Express.
Aha!
Which I decided to pick up, after seeing the movie, as we discussed. Because I had never read any of Agatha Christie's stuff, and I had never read any of the Poirot mysteries.
Right.
Certainly, I had not read that before I saw the movie, and you'll recall I enjoyed the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And you had given me a warning about it.
Indeed.
Because I had mentioned I'm a fan of Sherlock Holmes and other true mystery stories where you can actually solve the mystery along with the detective because they don't, no information is concealed from you.
Right.
A concept known in mystery writing as playing fair, apparently.
Right.
And there is even a mystery writer's code to which Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was a signatory. Specifically about this. But you warned me that Agatha Christie does not play by that.
She does not.
Especially because one of the things that had excited me about the movie was a few minutes before the reveal, I turned to Tiny in the movie theater and said, I think all of them did it. I think it was a conspiracy. By the way, spoiler alert.
Yeah.
I think it was a conspiracy. They all planned this and did it. My only mistake was I actually thought the conductor was involved. Not the conductor, the company guy.
Right.
I thought that he had arranged to put them all in the carriage and he was going to turn out to have some background too. So I was very proud of that. I was proud that the movie let me get there.
Yep.
The book, and though it's hard to judge because, knowing the answer as I did, the book does not.
No, it doesn't.
I mean, it kind of does. Like, it's like you could get to the point of realizing that, it had to be all of them, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I think what happens in the book is that you get tired of trying to figure it out, which leaves you with either nobody did it or everybody did it.
Which, honestly, though, I think that's fair because that was kind of the point, was they created an unsolvable crime, which is what drove Poirot crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Was that nothing about the crime made sense, that there was too much evidence for too many different people. And
yeah.
But it was interesting though, because at least he called out the important parts from the non-important parts. He's like, I think this is the only real piece of evidence.
Right.
At various points he was pointing out what he thought was significant.
Yeah. By the way, none of this means it's not a good book.
Right. And I was going to say that.
Okay.
I thoroughly enjoyed the book. There was a little bit too much gratuitous French. I understand sometimes an author throws in a foreign language to remind us that the character speaks this language or whatever.
Uh-huh.
And the key when you do that is to make sure that from context, the reader can figure out what was said, even if they don't know the language. Poirot spends a little bit too much time bantering and making in-jokes in French. So to the point where you read a line where he says something to one of his friends, like his conductor friend or whatever, and I have no idea what he just said, but they both found it funny.
Yeah.
Well, that's good.
Right.
So there's a little... And it was weird because it stood out because there were so many places in the book where they said, well, she didn't speak German, so we spoke English, or she didn't speak French, so we spoke German. And then they all speak in English anyway. So they spend all this time talking about all of the languages they were speaking that were being printed in English, but then they would just speak French sometimes too.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. He's Belgian. So
yeah, no, I understand he's Belgian.
You have to allow a little bit of that. Mm-hmm. I think actually one of the reasons he does that, one of the reasons she wrote him like that, is kind of to emphasize the fact that even though he's living in England, and he's still not really entirely integrated, there
was actually a very, very strong theme of cultural non-integration.
Yeah.
That ran through the book. Because everyone had something to say about Italians or Englishmen or Americans or the Germans or the Swedes. The one character, the American character, and the British character, the Indian colonel, the British
mm-hmm.
colonel who's coming from India. right? The two of them both say basically the same thing. They said, normally I don't like Englishmen, but he was okay. And then the English guy says, normally I can't stand Americans, but I kind of got along with him.
Right.
And, but there was a lot of that, and there was a lot of criticism of the different cultures. And a lot of references to, stereotypical cultural character. But, I guess that's just from the time. I'm not calling that out as, oh my God, I was offended because I'm Italian and German and they said mean things,
Yeah.
They also said a lot of true things, so.
I wonder.
Yep, that's my family reunion right there.
I wonder how intentional that was.
You mean, was it a deliberate choice, or was it just she wrote, just because it was something that happened frequently, and so in imitating the language of the time, it just happened into the story? Did that make sense?
Yeah. I think it was a deliberate choice.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think, you can correct me if I'm wrong, because I haven't read the story in quite a while.
Yeah.
But I think...
Oh, crap. I agree with you. I just thought about it. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. I think, actually... Okay, yes, it's a mystery and all that. But I think that one of the themes she had when she wrote Murder on the Orient Express was to point out that no one person or nationality is more or less likely to commit murder than anybody else, or to commit a crime than anybody else. And that in pointing that out, that's how she arrives at everybody did it.
I don't know if I would call that the strong theme specifically.
Right.
But I think there is a thematic element of... Well, so, like, at the very beginning, they're talking about the romanticism. Poirot and conductor. I can't remember his name. And I know he's not the conductor. I know he's actually, like, the company director. He's the director of the train. But anyway, the two of them are talking about, you think about all these people from all these different backgrounds who are coming together purely by chance on this train, who have absolutely nothing in common. Because they're all from different places and cultures, and they have no common ground to speak. And they come together for a short period of time, and then they all go their separate ways. And isn't that a weird and wonderful idea? Right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And when the train gets stranded in the snowdrift, she comes back to that idea because one of the first things that happens is the passengers start talking to each other more.
Right.
Because as the emergency happens, it brings together these people. And Poirot observes, isn't it amazing how a thing like this can bring together all of these different cultures and people into common cause of annoyance? And ultimately, the revelation and the mystery is that, isn't it amazing that all of these people from all these different backgrounds and stuff could be brought together by a horrific and traumatic event, and then come to basically a common cause of exacting justice, and then go their separate ways again. So there is that developing theme. The one interesting thing, though, is that they also pointed out that the only place you would see a household through which all these different cultures had passed, because ultimately all the characters from all the different cultures had either lived in or worked with or related to a family whose daughter had been murdered. Right? Mm-hmm. And she says the only place in the world you would have all of these different cultures and people working and living together under one roof is America. And whereas the start of the book is the only place where all these people would ever get together is on a train ride.
Right.
So there was a little bit of, isn't it amazing how multicultural America is? Despite the fact that throughout the rest of the book, there is a lot of also disrespect for Americans. But then there's a lot of disrespect for every one of the cultures. And the characters are real. I mean, ultimately, they all have their little cultural umbrellas that they live under.
Mm-hmm.
And they all have their opinions on who else is doing it right and who else is doing it wrong. You know? So, but yeah, there is definitely a theme of multiculturalism and of bringing people together. And sadly, it's the things that unite people are tragedies. Suddenly ultimately that's the message of the book. What breaks down all cultural barriers is tragedy. You know, your train gets stopped, it gets derailed, it gets snowed in, or a child is murdered. And now you're all one people. Wow, that's depressing.
Uh-huh. Anyway, so I'm glad you liked the book.
I really did. It was very good.
I'm glad you found it entertaining. Are you going to read up any more of her stuff?
I don't know. I feel like I have enough Christie now. You know, I mean, this is pretty much considered one of her best works, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, certainly.
So yeah, I've read the best. Why would I read her other stuff? It was good, but I don't feel like I need any more. You know.
Okay. All right. Not even just a sample of Miss Marple?
I might. I'll take a recommendation.
Okay. I will provide you with a recommendation, but not right now.
Will it be in the show notes?
No, not in the show notes. I don't feel like I can do it right now.
No, that's fair.
Cuz we're, kind of out of time.